Hello and welcome to episode 4 of The Wine Maverick. In this episode, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I do not have a guest lined up. It's just going to be me. And that will happen from time to time. I'll be in between guests as far as booking goes and scheduling. Or I will just, not have a guest lined up for a couple weeks and it'll just be me running the show. In the entertainment industry, we call this the good old filler episode or the bottle episode. And the idea is, episodic podcast. I put these out bi-weekly. I've got to continue feeding that beast, so no matter what, episode comes out. All right, so I am going to keep this nice and casual. A couple things. You might hear my dog in the background. Her name is Fig. She is a 2-year-old pit bull, so you might hear her pitter-pattering around with her paws on the hardwood floor, or most likely you're going to hear her snoring in the background. So if that happens, I'm just going to manage it as best as I can. I'll probably just let it happen because I think it's really cute, and I do not want to keep her locked up in a kennel for the hour or hour and a half that I'm going to be doing this. So on the other side of the theme song, we'll start the episode, and let's see how this goes. Hopefully you stick around. Hey guys, it's Pablo, the host of The Wine Maverick, and today's episode is brought to you by Identity Wine Company. Identity wines are truly artisan small lot wines sourced from unique vineyards throughout California and handcrafted in Napa Valley by me, Pablo Antonio Suarez. For more info, head over to www.identitywines.com where you can check out my current releases in the online bottle shop. You can check out wine club membership options and learn more about me and my journey in becoming a winemaker in Napa Valley. Identity Wine Company. Every bottle has a story. Identity Wine. Yeah. Now, let's start the show.
The Wine Maverick is prepared for takeoff. Clear the runway. And 3, 2, 1.
All right, guys, like I mentioned before in the very beginning, no guest today. It's just going to be me. I want to do a nice, fun, little, easy episode for us. I'm just going to talk about how I got here really quickly. I'm not going to get fully long-winded with it because you guys just don't need to hear all of it. I also want to do a little mailbag series. So on Instagram, you can follow me at The Wine Maverick, and every other Wednesday, I do a Ask the Maverick segment where my followers can ask me, questions. It could be wine related. It could not be. I always think they're fun. I do get some pretty nice questions and some good kind of interactions there. So I'm going to do one of those, a little version of that segment where I kind of just, questions that I've been asked before that I think are kind of poignant. I will bring those up and answer those questions. If you do want to ask me questions, I do have a email address where you can send me wine questions and I will answer them on air. I really want to make this a thing. So send me an email. My email address is thewinemaverickshow@gmail.com. Send over any kind of messages, or if you dig the show, have any comments, and you want me to read your name on air, as they say, and give you shout out and, basically, start a whole conversation. Thewinemaverickshow@gmail.com is your place. All right. So first things first, I do need to crack open a bottle of wine. There have been some life updates, so we'll get into that. And then, let's see where this episode takes us. I'm kind of free-forming, which sometimes is bad. I'm not great at freeform. I like to follow a template. But sometimes freeform is good. Sometimes I can just kind of wing it. So we're going to wing it. So first things first, like I start most of my episodes, we are going to crack open a bottle of wine, and then I'm going to taste it, discuss it, and we'll go from there. And full disclosure, this bottle of wine is already cracked open. It was actually cracked open yesterday. It is a beautiful bottle of Cabernet Franc. I figured if I'm going to do my own, if we're going to do my first episode with me only, let me just kind of, get into my wheelhouse and work with things that I know and love and appreciate. And Cabernet Franc is definitely that. So in my glass, I have a little bit of Cabernet Franc coming from a awesome producer, Ashes and Diamonds. Ashes and Diamonds is located in Napa on Highway 29, kind of just north of downtown. And they're a relatively newer outfit. They're owned by Kashi Khalidi, and he launched the winery in 2017. He contracts with only certified organic vineyards. His winemaking staff has a couple of heavy hitters in it. One of the reasons that made me really put them on my radar is Steve Mathiasen. He's like a Napa legend. He's all about biodynamic, organic farming practices and minimal intervention winemaking. Basically, the same ethos that I, like to follow in making my own identity wine company wines. So yeah, let's taste this and see where we're at. All right, here we are. So in my glass, like I mentioned before, vintage here is 2022, and it is a Cabernet Franc coming out of Ashes and Diamonds Winery, just up the road in Napa, just north of downtown, like I mentioned before. This bottle is in a Burgundian bottle, which is, the kind of bottles that you see Pinot Noir in, and that is very much by choice. Winemaking staff here, Steve and Kashi wanted to kind of pay tribute to old school Loire and Chinon, which is where Cabernet Franc is a little bit more subdued, minimal, not as big and tannic. Cabernet Franc always has like this calling card of like herbaceousness. Think like green bell peppers, baking spices, black pepper, white pepper. There is some spice there, but not like in that Zinfandel territory. And with this one, it is really light and bright on the palate. So not a lot of tannin. In Napa, in California, Cabernet Franc is actually pretty widely planted. You do see quite a bit of it, but it is actually, brought off the vineyard or picked a little bit later in ripeness at higher sugar levels. And when that happens, you do get a lot of that pyrazine green herbaceousness, and you get big, jammy tannins. So sometimes Cabernet Francs on their own can be like just massive. A lot of the Cabernet Franc that is being grown here is going into Cabernet Sauvignon in the form of blending to kind of give it that nice herbaceous characteristic. Really nice on the aromatics. But what I love most about this is that this Cabernet Franc is not that typical Napa Cab Franc. It is so just old world European in style. So on the nose, you get a little bit of that herbaceousness, but it's not like full green bell pepper. It's more like in the sense of like cracked peppercorns, and then a lot of like minerality in the form of like graphite. And when I say graphite, I mean like, remember being a kid in elementary school and then having to go up to the wall and sharpen your pencil, and there was that little pencil sharpener with a little like wind up grinder that you had to like literally just manually sharpen your own pencil, and then you would smell the pencil shavings. That is what the aromatics are like on this wine, and it is just so intoxicatingly good. And then on the palate, let's take a sip. On the palate, you have really nice, crunchy red fruit, bright acidity. It is just like literally puckering me up. And then you have this underlying just softness. No major tannin here. And as I understand, Steve Mathiasen picks this fruit a little bit earlier in the ripeness cycle. He wants that high acid. And then he is not doing any crush. He is destemming to whole berries and letting that ferment, which is really where you're minimizing that major tannin extraction. The result is a beautiful, elegant, old world European style Cabernet Franc that is quite food friendly. You can pair this with like, I don't know, carnitas tacos. You can do ribeye, smoked meats, anything really. It is quite lovely, and it's wine that I am like really high on right now, really keen on it, as they like to say. So let's roll into a couple of life updates, shall we? So in the last couple weeks since you heard last, I've done a couple things. So first things first, I guess I should jump into, I participated in the Garagiste wine festival, which was amazing. And the Garagiste wine festival is a really cool one because they specialize in promoting only small winemakers. So I believe, if I remember correctly, when I was doing my admission paperwork, you can only make 5,000 cases of wine or less in order to qualify and be able to pour at the Garagiste wine festival. And the Garagiste, they're a rotating festival, so they do a pouring event in Los Angeles. They also do one in Paso Robles, and then also in Solvang, and the one where I did mine out in Sonoma, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump from my winery in Napa. And that was, as of this recording, 2, maybe 3 weeks ago now, that I had my own little booth, and I poured wines for a bunch of lovely people that were really geeking out on small lot wines. I was in a booth next to a couple cool cats, so immediately to my left, there was a young guy, probably my age, who just launched his label, and he's got some chops. He's been in cellars and he's an assistant winemaker at a winery out in Sonoma, and then he decided to kind of do his own thing. And his wines were delicious and amazing. I will shout him out because why the hell not? Let's all help each other out. But his label is called Calm with a K, so Kalm, Calm Cellars. And he had a beautiful Sauvignon Blanc that, of course, we got to talking. We started sharing sips of each other's wines, and his Sauv Blanc was really lovely. If I remember correctly, he was sourcing it out of Rock Pile out in Sonoma, if I remember. But, my memory's not what it used to be. And then to my right, we had Grayscale Vineyards, owned by an older couple. They're based out of Napa. They were really nice, really lovely. We actually have a couple people that we know in common, and they've been doing Garagiste Festival for a while. So they were a good kind of neighbor to have. They kind of gave me the run of show and how it went. As far as the kind of people that would show up to my table and taste my wines, the cool thing about it was they were so into it. And I really want to credit Garagiste for putting it together very well. All of the wineries, myself included, we had a big old pamphlet program, and they had all of our wines listed. So we would have people literally coming to my table just, I hear you have a Chenin Blanc. I hear you have a Viognier. I gotta try it. So it was really cool because it creates this thing where people can just go down the list of wines that they want to try, and then find that table, find that winemaker, and have real meaningful conversations. There was quite a bit of other winemakers, other industry folks, wine writers, some somms that were also tasting through, and it was just, again, really great to get into conversations with like-minded wine-loving people. And I would definitely do that event again. Just because I feel like it's money well spent, and it really wasn't that big of a buy-in to do this tasting event, and I feel like I just kind of loved it. The wines I did pour were a good portion of my portfolio. I did both of my whites, so my Viognier and my Chenin Blanc. The Chenin Blanc was a hit. Everybody loved it. And then I did my Mourvedre, my Napa Cab, my Identity Crisis Red Blend, and then my Yorkville Highlands Mendocino Cabernet. So I had quite a lineup on that table. And yeah, the stars of the show on the white side were definitely the Chenin Blanc, and then everybody loved the Red Blend and the Mendocino Cab too. So I would definitely do that event again if you are local to the Bay Area or even Southern California. If you do see the Garagiste Wine Festival pop up, I would recommend checking it out because you are literally in front of the table with the owner. And that's another thing too. Only winemakers and owners could man the booths. So it's not like they could, these wineries could hire somebody else to just pour wines for them. You were in direct contact with the small lot owner or the winemaker. And that to me is just huge. It's the kind of stuff I love. And when I think about small craft wine industry, small craft anything, you want to be directly in contact with the makers. And I feel like that is something that is kind of lost these days. And we just need more of things like this. And we need the consumers, that is you guys, to really rally behind this kind of idea and to seek out these smaller producers because it's so important to all of us. Yeah, so that's one little life update. I had a great time at Garagiste. Another one, this one's going to be a little bit tougher to talk about, but we got to get into it. We just got to do it. This one is, I have changed jobs. What? I know. It's crazy. But yes, this is hard because if you've noticed in the last 3 episodes, I try to keep everything vague. I don't really like to mention where I was working and where I'm, I don't really like to name drop or call attention to things, or I just like to keep it vague. But I don't, as I'm saying this right now and I'm stumbling about it, I can feel myself literally squirming and stumbling about whether I should tell you or not, because I went from one tasting room to another. I went from a bigger operation, a much more well-known, big-name winery, to a much smaller, more boutique, geeky winery. And I also changed locations. So I was working at and this is going to give it away if you're really tapped into the industry, but I was working at a really big, still family-owned company winery in Sassoon Valley, and then I have since come back to Napa, and I'm working at a smaller, more boutique, more minimal intervention winery in Napa. I'm really happy to be back in Napa, although I have no ill things to say about Sassoon Valley. I really enjoyed it. Truly more off the radar, more agriculturally driven. Seems more like what Napa used to be like back in the 70s. And I'm back in Napa, and it's just the glitz and glam, and there's very much a whole different kind of like we talked about it with RJ in the episodes before. There's like a whole stigma being, in Napa as opposed to other regions. But it is nice. I started my career in Napa in 2018 as far as winemaking goes and being around it in the valley. So it almost feels like a homecoming. I had been gone for about, 2 years. And although, I'm leaving this big winery, I'm leaving it in really good, amicable terms. I have no ill feelings towards them, and I actually really enjoyed my time working with them and with the family directly. But I don't know, it was just time to move on. Sometimes, you just feel like you're a little bit stuck, and not stuck in a bad way, but like you're just kind of like, you're doing the same thing over and over, and you don't really see a way out. And not that, again, it's not that I was like, mad or pissed off or like, just feeling a certain mundane way about it, but I just kind of knew. Sometimes you just know when it's like, it's time to go. I really enjoyed my stay here. I have nothing bad to say. I would, maybe I'd do it again if I had the chance, if they wanted me to come back, but I know in my heart that it's time to move on and just pursue something else. And that was kind of where I was at with this. The big thing is with this new winery, it is literally a 7-minute commute from my house. So that just made a lot of sense. And I kind of got back into telling stories and moving wines that are more directly in line with my winemaking ethos and the way I think wine should be made. And that is to say, more organically farmed, less intervention in the winery, more native fermentations, and just kind of, small lots of artisan handmade things as opposed to bigger, more industrialized winemaking. So that's been really fun. It is a later start time, so tasting room that I'm at now opens at 11. I do get out a little bit later. I'm in a lead position, so I stay a little bit later working on some sales reports. But that's been really enjoyable. As of this recording, it's only my first weekend, so, like I was telling Sheena, there might be a little bit of a honeymoon phase, but I don't think so because it feels like a really great crew that I'm breaking in with. And yeah, I really love the building, the winemaking staff, the management, the owner. We hit it off immediately when I was going through my interviews, and he just seems like we have a lot of like-minded ideology as far as how to run a winery and how to make wine. So yeah, I'm like really jazzed about that. Yeah, let me take another sip of this beautiful Cabernet Franc that I'm really digging. I think I did a really good job there of keeping it vague without saying anything. I almost wanted to, but I do think it's better off that I don't mention too much. So as far as any other life stuff that I have going on, as far as Identity Wine Company is concerned, we're kind of in that moment where I got to make a couple decisions as to there's the things I have in barrel that I got to make decisions as far as like what I want to bottle. So that's happening. Going through just tasting things, trying to see what I want to blend or what I want to leave on its own. We're still a little ways out from harvest, but right now, middle of May, this is when winemakers really start kind of like getting that itch. Might go take my first vineyard walk. It's always nice to get out there, start kicking the dirt, walking through the rows. Right now in the vineyards, there's not much going on. We did have, bud break. We are getting foliage out on the vines, but we haven't had flowering or fruit set yet. And fruit set is really when you start seeing the little baby, grape clusters, the new growth coming out, and you kind of get an idea for what your harvest is going to look like. I've committed to just one thing so far, and that is my Chenin Blanc out of Clarksburg. I'm kind of holding out, trying to see what else is going to be dropping out in the market. I'm in touch with other growers, trying to see, what varietals I might want to play with. I think I'm going to keep it really light. That is to say, like, not commit to anything just yet. I've been talking to other, small lot winemakers, other people in the industry, and we all kind of think that it's going to be a pretty big bounty out there. There's a lot of wineries dropping contracts, which means there's going to be a lot of fruit with no homes and a lot of growers trying to lower prices and kind of move their grapes. So I think if we are patient this year, we can wait for, grape prices to come down a little bit. And I think that's kind of my strategy there. This could all, just be completely false, and Mother Nature could probably, throw a whole curveball. But right now, it's looking that way. It looks like it's going to be a buyer's market, basically. So if I just stay true, and that's a funny thing for me because I'm the kind of winemaker that like, ooh, I want to try that. More of it, I'll take that. Oh my God, there's Rousson over here. I'll buy that. And I just kind of like want to buy it all and make it all. But I'm learning from past lessons here not to bring in all the grapes all the time. I have a set strategy. And Sheena, my girlfriend, and my parents would appreciate this because harvest would be a time when I usually overextend myself. And now I'm like, you know what? No, let's be smart. Bring in only what I need, what I know I can sell, and then go from there. So I'm learning, guys. I'm learning. It's amazing. So yeah, I'm excited to just kind of have a month and a half of like not really thinking about it, and then jumping into like really needing to start thinking about it as harvest gets near. So yeah, those are a couple life update things. I think I'm gonna take a little break here, and then we'll come back with my Ask the Maverick mailbag, session that I was talking about. Just a little sneak peek and teaser as to how I do things on Instagram, and we'll go from there. All right, we'll see you back after the break. All right, welcome back to the Wine Maverick. So, on this end of the break, we are going to do a fun little segment. This is something that I already do on my Instagram page. You can follow me on Instagram at the Wine Maverick, and this segment is basically called Ask the Maverick. So through Instagram, I just put that little ask me a question box out there, and then you go on and ask me questions, and then I spend the whole day answering those questions. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, nothing to it. So I have a couple examples of what those questions are, and I'm about to read them. And I kind of want to get this going on the podcast as well. I'm going to have a whole Wine Maverick mailbag. It's already active. You can go to the Wine Maverick Show at gmail.com. Ask me your questions there via email. You can shout out. You can do whatever you want. Just case in point, just go to the Wine Maverick Show at gmail.com and you just send me an email. Just let me know that my email works. How about that? So let's go off with the first one, and it's a pretty big one. So the first question that I've had, and it's pretty polarizing and poignant for right now, and that question is, how are tariffs affecting the wine industry? Well, look at that. Right now, so we all know, not to get into the whole intricacies of the political climate, but tariffs are a big hot button item right now. And this administration has said that it will impart tariffs on other countries, mainly China, and hit them really hard. Europe as well has been mentioned as being hit with tariffs at one point, and there's this whole kind of idea of keeping it national, keeping it everything. Like that's just because I'm in the wine industry and I'm just going to stick to that. I'm not going to speak outside of my lane. The idea being like, well, we're American. We make wine in America. We should put those tariffs on Europe and, basically stop buying their products and only focus on American wineries and American winemakers and what could go wrong there, right? In theory, that sounds great. I'm an American winemaker. My company's based in America. How's that going to hurt me? Well, let me tell you how. First things first. Yes, we are harvesting grapes mostly from the United States, mostly California, right? It is a pretty local operation in that sense. But here comes the thing. In order to make the wine, I have to buy equipment, things like stainless steel tanks that are usually coming from Germany or Italy or China or Japan, so my cost of operations will go up in that sense if I have to buy heavy equipment. Most of the winemaking equipment is pretty much made by really big Italian or German companies. And then also, let's say we already have that equipment. I don't have to buy any, tanks or optical sorters this year. I still have to buy glass in order to bottle all my wines. And glass is made in basically three main countries. You can get glass made here in the United States, but nobody really does because it's expensive. You can get glass made in Mexico, which is pretty doable. Just hop, skip, and a jump over the border. Or you can get glass that is manufactured in China, and that is really the cheapest option. And China is one of those countries that is being hit hard or is going to get hit hard by the tariffs. So that is really where I start having an issue because making wine is never cheap to begin with. And then you start tweaking and messing with things down the trickle economics line, like bottles and supplies and labels that are mostly made in other countries, mostly made in China. And my costs start going up. And when my costs start going up, I start squirming a little bit. And that's just one example. And I'm a small operator, literally paying 75 cents per label as opposed to $1.25 per label. Doesn't sound like much, but it screws the shit out of me and I don't want to do it. So this is kind of the very delicate balance that this current administration is playing with, where yes, as far as like, performative politics and making this grand statement of like we're keeping everything in house, we're not going to rely on other countries to do this, sounds good, but the actual people on the front lines that are buying those products and trying to keep their margins in certain levels where they're not going to go bankrupt, that is how tariffs are hurting even, domestically operated companies. Another big thing too is that I wanted to touch on is like, okay, fine. Let's say you're not a winemaker, but you're a restaurant owner and you have a wine list a wine and spirits list actually, that are really proud of. Now, you're bringing in these beautiful imported wines, you're bringing in these imported spirits, and you're paying a certain price for them. Now, with the tariffs, that price has gone up exponentially to a point where you're struggling to make ends meet. The argument would be, well, only buy American made spirits and wines. Yeah, that might be an option. But then again, think about the small family importer, because most of the times these really cute little spirits that you like to put in your cocktails, or these one of a kind, unique bottles of wine that you like to see on a wine list and like to purchase, are being imported by just regular old Joe Schmo American mom and pop operations that already are playing the margins and barely making money. Now they're dealing with the tariffs and struggling to bring in these unique, beautiful products, and they end up, going bankrupt or not bringing in the product and causing a whole mess again in that trickle down end user consumer, which is you, most of us who are buying these things and seeking them out. To just say stay domestic, it's better in the long run, is not really the truth, and it's hurting so many of us on the domestic side that you don't think about it. Think of it as like throwing a rock in a lake and then having that ripple effect just keep on rippling out further and further. It's touching so much more than just wine or spirits. The tariffs are a huge issue that we need to really figure out, because there's so much hanging in the balance. And that is kind of my thing. For me personally, directly, as a small winemaker in an industry that is, again, on a major downturn, messing around with tariffs is not what we should be doing right now. We should actually back the F off of that and allow us to bring in materials that are being made at great prices and allow us to actually make a profit and work our margins and not make it harder for people like us. So, and that's across the board with every small business owner. So that's my mind state on that. Don't tweak with it. Don't mess with it. You're kicking a really big beehive. So that's question number one. What a question to start with, right? Question number two. Let's take a look here at my handy dandy list. Okay, a little bit more light and bright. Good, thank God. I don't know if I can handle another hard-hitting question after the tariff one. So question number two is, what has been your favorite varietal to make? Now, this is a great question because, when I first started as a harvest intern back in 2018, I got my hands on red grape varietals first. And red grape varietals are usually easier to make. They don't require any temperature control like white grape varietals do. And it's a little bit less involved. It's an easier kind of process. So usually you learn how to make red wine. But my favorite varietal that I've ever made is in fact a white wine. And that is my beautiful Viognier. Viognier was the very first white that white grape that I brought in and played with and kind of gave it a go. And the thing is, making white wine is more intricate. You have to play with temperature. You have to keep your temperatures lower or you're going to lose your beautiful, light, bright aromatics. White wines are usually more delicate, more playful, more vibrant, which requires more of like a deft hand in the cellar. You have to like oversee it a little bit more. Red wines, you can literally just crush the grapes, put them in an open top tank or a closed tank, let them ferment, go through extraction, and they don't really require much. They build up their own heat during fermentation. Your phenolics are going to stay the same for the most part, and it's just a much easier process. But white is really like that true challenge for a winemaker. Unless you're making Pinot. Pinot is like the hardest thing in the world, but white is, the winemaker challenging himself to make this beautiful wine. And my outsider Viognier is, I think, basically me corralling Mother Nature and figuring it out and playing and really making a nice, crisp, vibrant wine that is so food friendly and awesome. So yeah, Viognier for me, specifically my outsider Viognier coming out of Amador, Plymouth. That's been my favorite varietal to work with. On the red side, we touched on it before. I'm sipping on a Cabernet Franc. That's probably my favorite red varietal. Yeah, as far as varietal to make and play with, Viognier has been that. Next question, moving on down the line. What else we got? Ooh, this is another one. Oh man, coming in with the harder questions. This question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Oh boy. All right, so let's see. In 5 years, I would like to have my own tasting room and probably, honestly, my own small, very basic little wine making cellar or setup. As it stands right now, I am what's known as custom crushing. I am, in essence, buying time at a winemaking facility. I'm renting out, floor space, tank space, however you want to call it, but I'm borrowing or jumping in with other winemakers to kind of keep costs low and make wines together under one roof. It's a great model. I love it. I have nothing ill to say about it. But at some point, like every artist, every kind of, creator, you want to like take the reins and do it on your own. Just so happens that wine is a big kind of cost investment, so it's hard to do that up front. But I would like to eventually sell enough wine, get my name out there enough to own my own winery, my own plot of land, and have my own tasting room. Now, here's the thing. 5 years, I don't know if I can do that realistically in California. I feel like, number one, it's a very saturated market. We've touched on that in the first episode. There's just so many tasting rooms in downtown Napa alone, let alone all of Napa County, let alone all of California. It's just so saturated. Anybody who's made something of themselves here, has already kind of like is established and is the big name, and it's kind of hard to push yourself up front and kind of get that attention. And owning land in Northern California is, dear God, pretty much unattainable. So it just seems like the cards are stacked against me to really make that 5-year dream a reality. So what then? Well, Sheena and I talk a lot about possibly leaving California and moving on up the road to Oregon, perhaps even Washington. And for me, making wine in Oregon is really intriguing. A little bit more kind of Burgundian style varietals really thrive there. But there is some Cab Franc down in the Rogue Valley, a little bit further south, like on the California-Oregon border. Washington is within reach, so I can still make my Bordeaux. But then again, it opens this whole idea of being a winemaker where I can still go down to California, pick my grapes, make California wines, and then I'm based out of Oregon. I can make Oregonian Pinot and Chardonnay and Riesling. Oh my God, the Riesling. Oh, and then I can, go further north and basically spend my entire year making wine. That is like the dream. So I would begin harvest in California, then I'd go up to Oregon and start harvest there, and then finish in Washington. I can be making wine in 3 different states. I think that is very much the dream, and Sheen and I are angling ourselves to eventually, possibly, buy a little plot of land or, in Oregon or Washington where it's still kind of attainable. Land prices are getting higher, but they're not nowhere near in California levels yet. Pretty sure if you're in Oregon or Washington, you're probably sick and tired of hearing about Californians moving into your state. But I promise you, Sheen and I are pretty cool. We're not like your typical Californians, So, I think 5-year plan, realistically, if I had to think about it, I see myself making wine or having a base of operations in Oregon and then making wines in maybe 3 states. Oh, God, that would be so nice. So that's kind of that. That's my 5-year plan at some point. I don't really know how we're going to do that yet. We've had like loose talks and plans and like, these ideas kind of formulating. I do have some friends making wine in Oregon. You know what? Let's shout them out because I love them. Aaron and Angela of Rue Claire Wines. If you want to check them out, check out Rue Claire Wines. They're a beautiful, amazing couple that have been making wines. I think they've been at it for 1 year longer than I have, so I think they started in 2017. But yeah, they have a beautiful label, really nice Pinots, some GSM. They do a rosé. I don't think you guys make a white yet, but yeah, check them out. That is that. And then one last question. I'm kind of rapid firing them because the tariff one took so much time. But the last one, and this is an example of like, you don't have to ask me wine questions, but this is a great question. Ready? Question is, which Radiohead album is better, Kid A or OK Computer? Now, folks, here we are. So Radiohead is my thing. I love them. They're my favorite band in the world. And this person asked me this question because they knew me personally and they know that Radiohead is my thing. So my answer, this is a tough one because both albums have their merits, but honestly, it's a tough one. But I think OK Computer is one of the best albums ever made. With that said, though, Kid A was a high concept artistic departure and a grim and bleak commentary on the early 2000s. It's still really poignant today, honestly, if you listen to it. It's just so out there, it's hard to make a decision. To me, that jittery and heavily modulated piano opening sequence in Kid A's Everything in Its Right Place is like the best intro to any album ever, and it gives me goosebumps every single time I play it. I'm not kidding there. I mean, like, if you haven't heard Everything in Its Right Place, just play the first like 20 seconds of it and you kind of know what you're in for with the mood of the entire album. If you held a gun to my head and told me to pick OK Computer or Kid A, as far as like tracks and like songs that I can, listen to and like sit through, I think OK Computer, like I said in the beginning, it's one of the best albums ever made. I think OK Computer is the better album. But not mentioned here, one that is an honorable mention and to me like really was like my wheelhouse for Radiohead and what like just I can't stop listening to. It's actually In Rainbows. In Rainbows, man. Oh God, that album is so freaking good. I can listen to In Rainbows just from beginning to end over and over and over and over and over again. So yeah, just a little slice of what the Ask the Maverick series looks like. And yeah, send me an email, thewinemaverickshow@gmail.com. You have an idea of what questions are like now, send an email. Let's make this a thing. I know I'm really hitting this hard and heavy and I want to make this a thing. So just make it a thing. Cool. All right. One more thing, and then we'll get out of here. I promised we were going to keep this episode to less than an hour. Pablo, how did you get here? Oh my God, how did I get here? The story of the life of Pablo is very simple. And my story begins like most stories. I think the moment that I realized that I wanted out and I wanted something more. It all started like most of these stories start in a whiskey bar on a drunken night after a hard shift of work, and the realization that, number one, this old fashioned is very stiff, and number two, I need to get the fuck out of Miami. I just need to. So, that is kind of the basis. I was in wine back home in Florida, and I'm not going to start from the very beginning of my conception. I'm just going to start about the beginning of, at the beginning of my wine life. And I was working for a wine distribution company, and I was selling wines. I broke in with a big, conglomerate wine company. Then I started kind of focusing on more boutique, wine family and selling their higher end portfolio. And my life was kind of, your typical Miami fast lifestyle. I was hanging out at bars until the wee hours of the night. I had an expense account to kind of just sit with bartenders and sommeliers and beverage directors and kind of just woo them. My job was literally to sit around, make sure that these influential purchasers and wine curators saw my face and realized what company I was and just bought my products. And that was fun. And it was great, but it was driving me insane. I was working for a specific family, company that just had really intense and heavy duty case numbers every month. And if you didn't hit your numbers, there would be hell to pay. And, there would be a couple of, stressful nights, a couple of panic attacks, a couple of just, what am I doing? I'm just like this rat stuck in a wheel, just, making money for other people. And I'm not really fulfilling myself at all, in no way, shape, or form. I'm not fulfilling myself creatively. I'm not fulfilling myself passionately. I love the stuff that I'm doing, and I believe in wine and winemaking, but I don't know, I just felt like I was being chewed up and spat out. There were a couple people that in my circle that knew that and kind of felt that they needed to kind of guide me, and I am forever grateful to them. So I started thinking of what would it look like if I just decided to leave this distribution company and head out west to California and pursue the idea of jumping on the other side of the industry and making wine. And I did this knowing full well at the time, sitting in this freaking bar, that I was going to be leaving a lot of money on the table. Selling wine and spirits, it's very lucrative. You get incentives. You make commissions on as much as you sell. It's basic sales, right? And I was dealing with a lot of your typical douchey salespeople, and I was being fed this beautiful life of the more you sell, the more you earn, the further you move in the company. And I don't know, I just didn't want to be a part of that. I it's not like they're around to listen to this, and the people that I'm talking about that really made me feel a certain way, they were just douchebags, and I didn't want to live that life. I didn't want to work my way up and become one of those douchebags. So I had, this feeling of pulling the ripcord now. I'm still young enough where I can take this crazy idea, go work a harvest in Napa, and if it doesn't work, if it falls through, I'm still young enough and I can come back and, just sell something else if it's not going to be wine. So I had a couple people that knew that and they guided me. A dear friend, sommelier who I was selling wine to, he recommended that I reach out to a couple families that he knew personally in California. And he was really influential in setting me out on my trip to California to meet these families. And I hit it off with one of them and then decided right there on the spot that, you know what? I hadn't even quit my distribution job yet, but this would have been this was like early spring 2017. I came out to California and just kind of met a couple different winemaking families and met this beautiful family in Carneros. Took one step around the property, met everybody, walked through the vineyards, met the winemaker, and that was it. I knew it in my bones, in my heart. I was like, this is where I want to be. So I committed to joining them for Harvest 2018. And I flew back to Florida with full intentions of putting in my 2 weeks notice at my distribution company and starting to make my moves, starting to prep to, number one, tell my parents that I was going to leave and complete life change, right? So that happened. I did that, and I think I ended up getting laid off, which is like the funny thing. I was intending to quit. And then I kind of drug it out. I wanted to make sure, like in every job, that I leave the right way and that I give them enough time to find the replacement. So as I was in the process of doing that, the wine company that I was working for ended up jumping ship to another distributor. And when they did that, they decided to not invite me back. So they laid me off and gave me severance. And that was really beneficial in my eyes because if I would have quit, I would not have gotten that severance. So I like to think that somebody up there was looking after me and gave me that out and that severance package to basically fund my exit from Miami. So yeah, after that happened, it was pretty much having a conversation with my parents and all my friends to let them know that I have made this decision. This is happening. I am going to go pursue a dream of becoming a winemaker. I've always been creative. I have that passion. I have that drive to just build stuff, make stuff. Even as a kid, I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be a race car driver. I wanted to be a maker, the person, a creator. So falling in love with wine and winemaking was like this funny little turn in my life that I never thought was going to happen, but it happened. So in early 2018, I said my farewells. I hugged and kissed my parents tight, and then I packed up my life into a small little white Honda Civic and drove across the country. And driving across the country has probably been the coolest thing I've done. Honestly, you're just on this adventure by yourself, nobody else. I'm following this guy right now who is sailing from Oregon to Hawaii, and he's documenting his whole thing on Instagram, his whole trip. And I know what he's doing is much more like, he's literally risking his life out in the Pacific Ocean by himself. He's doing a solo sail. Like, that's legit shit, right? But I do feel like driving across the country by yourself is close to that, not the same. But I just felt so liberated, so free. Like, I can stop wherever I want. I can do whatever the F I want. Like, there's no rules holding me back. I stopped in some great places along the way. Savannah, Georgia, New Orleans, New Mexico. Oh my God. Santa Fe just changed. And I didn't spend that much time. I stayed there for a night. And dude, Santa Fe was just, if you ever have a chance to go, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like otherworldly, but so civilized and beautiful. I love Santa Fe. Spent some time in Arizona, met up with some friends in Phoenix, and then reported for duty for Harvest in 2018. And Harvest 18, working with this family, it was a dream. It was absolutely amazing. It just made me feel for the first time in a long time that I belonged somewhere, and that somewhere was California at that time. And I was just so happy to be getting the shit kicked in, because when you're a Harvest intern, you're the lowest person on the totem pole. You are cleaning out tanks, you're going out into the vineyard and sampling grapes, you're working really long days, you're waking up early in the morning, you're going to bed all banged up with, rolled ankles and, smelling CO2, and just, it's beautiful. But if you're not in it, if you're not passionate about it, if you're not passionate about what it takes to make wine, it's grueling. But I ended up loving it, man. And I was in such a great little spot with a small family where I was the only intern. And that means that I was basically just getting thrown to the wolves. I was doing everything. I was starting fermentations. I was digging out tanks. I was learning about carbonics. I was just soaking it all up. I was rinsing barrels, filling barrels, spending a lot of time in the cellar, in the caves, and it was just like a crash course in winemaking. And I feel like somebody up above was guiding me and giving me like a 5 month introduction as to how to get this all started. And then I've been leaning heavily on that same family and that winemaker. You know, they're mentors to this day, and I run a lot of stuff by them. And that was it. That was kind of like my aha moment where I was like, you know what? What if I just don't drive back to Miami? What if I just kind of like, get a job out here, figure it out? And that's exactly what happened. I ended up sticking around at that winery for a while, and then I started looking for jobs in tasting rooms, and kind of like I equate it to being an actor in Hollywood, and spending your time in restaurants while you're also like getting gigs and with studios and working on commercials and slowly filling out your reel. That's exactly what my winemaking journey has been. I'm working in tasting rooms, I'm getting my 401k, and I'm getting my benefits, all the while I'm slowly building and growing my passion and my dream, which is Identity Wine Company, my winery. So it all started with a drunken idea, but I don't want to say drunken idea because it's like, oh, what if I do this? No, it was like this sleeping thing that was already inside me that I just allowed to like really think about and say, what if? What if I just made this decision and go and pursue this with the full knowledge that if I fail, you know what? It's okay. I don't want to go to my deathbed thinking that I had a chance to do something and I didn't do it. So that's kind of how I've been living my life, and it's worked out really well. Of course, I found the love of my life out here in Sheena. We live in Napa together. We're really happy. We have a dog that you probably hear in the background, and like we're just kind of building this beautiful life together, and I'm pursuing a dream and a passion at the same time, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So that's kind of like the very quick version of how I ended up in Napa Valley making wines under a wine label and kind of just figuring it all out and keeping it together. Northern California has been fun. I love, the fact that we have, San Francisco just 45 minutes to the south. We go to the city a lot. We just love exploring. We drive out to the foothills a lot. We do a lot of camping and vacationing. I was doing rock climbing for a little while. Gym climbing, of course. We're getting into kayaking. California is just this place where you can, literally go out snowboarding, go surfing. You can do so much. It's so adventure and outdoor friendly. And I'm just really happy that I made that decision to do what I'm doing, because it's really fulfilled me and it's shaped out what my life has become or has been since 2018, and I just want to keep on going from here. So I think that's a really good place to end it. We've covered a lot of things, and this has been episode 4 of the Wine Maverick. I am gonna have a guest lined up for episode 5, so you'll be able to get that format. We'll go back to that kind of usual format, but I'm sure there'll be more solo episodes, and I'll be covering different topics from here on out. Head on over to www.identitywines.com to check out the wines that I make, online bottle shop. Look at club membership options. That really does help me out a lot. Your support helps me out tremendously. I really do rely on people like you to take a shot on unique craft products that I make. Also, like we touched on as well, the mailbag. I'm making it a thing, guys. The mailbag. Send me an email, thewinemaverickshow@gmail.com. Just tell me you like the show, or if you have any tips or any suggestions, or if you have any questions. thewinemaverickshow@gmail.com. I'm making it a thing. All right. You guys have a good day. Hopefully this was a good episode for you. We'll see. Bye.